Do you sometimes feel like you've lost your heart for ministry? Well, then stick around because today we're talking about 3 ways that you can get it back.
Welcome to the Ministry Coach Podcast, where we bring you weekly tips and tactics to help you fast track the growth and health of your youth ministry. My name is Jeff Lascola, and this is
Kristen Lascola.
And tonight, among the many things we'll be discussing, one of them is going to be at the end when we talk about random places we barfed. So make sure you stick around to that.
On pins and needles.
Little teaser. But anyway.
And how many people just clicked off? Oh, yes. 200 people are gone.
Don't worry. We want to hear where you barfed. That was a weird place, too. But we'll get to that. All in good time. No, so tonight we're talking about bringing your heart back for ministry. Like when you lose the passion, if you will.
Yeah. We had a great meeting last week, and I wrote some notes, and I thought, man, this would make a really great episode. And we talked about a few different things, but one of the questions that kept coming up is, how do you get your heart back for ministry? And I think it's one of those things that it's like when you lose your heart for ministry, you know it, but you maybe are in a little bit of denial and you don't want to admit it. And that's okay. You don't have to admit it to anybody except for yourself and God, maybe, to work through it. But I think it's a really discouraging place to be. And today we're going to talk about 3 ways that you can start to regain your heart for ministry that feels like a loss. Because here's one of the pitfalls and dangers, I think, in this season. And that's exactly what it is, a season. And our student ministries and senior pastor, Chris Brown, reminds us when you call something a season has a beginning and an end. Mm-hmm. So if you're going through a dry spell, if you're going through a desert, if you're going through a wilderness, if you're in this place, it doesn't mean it's time to quit. And I think that's what I want to start off by letting our youth pastors know, is that I think you can mistake the lack of passion and the lack of heart as, well, I guess I'm done in youth ministry. But it is a season and leaders go through it, and even pastors go through it. We don't want to admit it because obviously that doesn't look great. Like, here I am serving you people, but my heart's not in it. My heart's at home watching Netflix. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't think we could really publicly say that in a way. Like, I'm all for being vulnerable, for sure. But there's just some, I think, really sensitive areas of our lives and of our leadership that I don't think we could really publicly talk about that. And so what do we do? How do we navigate it? And I want you guys to know that, like, our listeners, it doesn't mean it's time to quit. Don't panic and think, oh, I'm done in ministry. I don't love it anymore. Well, you might not love it in this season, but if you've been called, sometimes I just feel like I wish we were better at weathering storms. You know what I mean? I think that's a sure sign of maturity when you can look at something and not panic and say, I will get through this. This is a season. I feel kind of weird right now. I feel kind of depressed about this. I don't feel like my heart is in it, but who knows where that's coming from? We can't even start to excavate all the reasons that could be in this episode, but it could be for many reasons that could not be related to it's time to quit. It could be a billion different things of why your heart's not in. Do you feel like your heart is in parenting every single day? Like, I just wake up and can't wait to drive everyone to school and like make lunches and clean up after everyone. And no, like, there's times where you're like, oh, parenting's the worst, but it doesn't mean you give up. It means there's going to be a better day coming when your heart is back in the right place. It just means you've been paying attention to the wrong things, maybe, or you're just bummed about something else and now you're over dramatizing everything. So as youth pastors, we want to be careful of not over dramatizing the seasons where our heart's not in it, because if I had given up every time I felt like, oh, my heart's not in it, then I'd be missing out on a ton right now. And I don't feel like my time in youth ministry is done at all. but maybe I felt like that 8 years ago. So
Yeah.
what if I'd given up 8 years? You know what I mean? It's like, just be very careful not to be overly trigger happy on that kind of thing. So here's what Chris Brown said in our meeting. This is, I think, a rough quote, but I was writing some notes. He said, "The wilderness is essential for leadership. God takes leaders through the wilderness, but there is an end to it." And then he said, "Great men and women of God do not come from the tents of ease. They come from the wilderness. The lessons learned in the desert can't be learned in the land of fruitfulness." So this whole idea that the desert is this place that is painful and it's dry and it's hard, but, pointing to the ultimate wilderness leadership test, Jesus in the wilderness in preparation for the climax of his ministry, the greatest and most difficult season was the precursor to that was the wilderness experience. And it was lonely and it was difficult and it was tempting and it was trying. And, I don't think Jesus was having a good time. Right. I mean, starving out in the fasting out in the desert, like being tempted by Satan doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, but it was a season and it was preparation and it had an end to it. And so the biggest leadership lessons we learn and the biggest refining process we go through is usually in those times where our heart isn't in it, because we come out of that season a different person if we're willing to, like I said, weather the storm, to wait it out, to let ourselves be in that crucible, in that fire, to see then what comes out of it. That whole passage about the refiner's fire, and he sits there and he tempers it until, I think it was Oswald Chambers or something. He said, until his face is reflected in it. And so it's this refinement process, but I think the enemy can use that against us and say, "Oh, see, you're not meant for this." And it kind of piggybacking what we talked off last week about the fatal mistakes that leaders make is, jumping ship too soon, right. And we talked a lot about that. And I think that really resonated with a lot of our listeners. And so I think this is kind of piggybacking off of that. But then what do you do then? Because you're in that place and you're just like, your heart can be just dismayed, or you could be a little panicked of like, "Oh shoot, like I thought this is what I was meant to do, but turns out it's not."
Right.
So anyways, I love John 15. "Apart from me, you can do nothing." And I think that is sort of the mantra of leadership, or should be. And it's that whole idea of abiding in Christ. Our Pastor Chris Bounty always says, abide, 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 or remain, 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 remain. Like he's like, how many times does it say it in that passage? In John 15, it says it over and over and over again, to remain, 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 remain in Christ. Apart from me, you can do nothing. He says it's agonizing doing the work of God without the Spirit of God, but he will still use you. And so if you find yourself in that place, like so many of us leaders do, of just like, this is agonizing and I don't want to quit, but my heart is not in it. Here's a couple things you might be able to do. So number one, take a break. And we talk a lot about self-care, and we've done episodes on that before. And depending on what state your heart is in, I think determines the kind of break that you need. Like, I don't think we can just blanket statement, take a break. Like, well, what does that mean? Because
a few minutes outside, grab a cup of coffee.
Well, yeah, maybe if you're just having a bad day or a hard conversation,
but
years
off.
If you're in a hard season. So I'll give you an example. Summer is a season, right? Quite literally, right? I get jealous when I hear of people taking vacations on the summer, because I'm like, how?
On the summer?
In the summer, around the summer, because this is when we ramp up in ministry a lot of times. Like summer and fall are the busiest for me in particular. I don't know what your ministry is like, but summer felt like a marathon to me this year. And I remember just feeling like, I just want it to be September. I just want it to be September. Like it was just, I was running, like when you do the math, it was about 5 programs a week, like that I was seeing students. It was just felt like no breaks, and it kicked my butt. And then I had a really unfortunate event happen with a student and it just rocked me and it got messy and it was just like killing my vibe and it just sucked my soul. And so I remember at the end of summer when finally our beach days are over and, all of that, I just told our campus pastor, like, I'm going to like be hit or miss this week. I just need some time. And I felt like the kind of break I needed was making a poke bowl and sitting in my bed watching Queen's Gambit, eating lunch under my covers. Like I never eat lunch in my bed, but I just felt this draw to comfort.
Yeah.
Like I just want to sit in my bed, eat a poke bowl and watch Netflix. And some people are like, oh, that's not restorative rest. Like just binge watching a show. But you want to know what? For me, and normally I'd agree with that because I'm kind of like, even in rest right. Must be productive, productive rest, which I fall into that a lot of times. And sometimes my rest is more productive. Like I'll go to the beach and I'll journal and I'll worship alone. And, I have this spot in Carlsbad that I love and it's just like beautiful and serene and kind of a lonely spot on the beach. But this was more like, remember when Elijah was like just done and like, it was that angel came and like made him some cake.
Which is one of the greatest verses ever.
Greatest stories. And it was just sort of like, you need to be taken care of right now. You need some comfort and rest. Here's some cake, like chill. And that was exactly where I was this summer. My version of taking a break, I took about a week. It wasn't like this long sabbatical of like 4 months and nobody heard from me, but it was about a week. I came in when I wanted. Most of the time I didn't. I ate lunch.
Didn't want to or didn't come in?
Didn't go in. I just needed to just like have a reset, eat lunch in my bed. And I felt better after. Like I really did. Like that's like being drawn to my bed and good food and a good show. It was exactly what I needed. So I just listened to my body instead of saying, no, watching Netflix is a waste of time. Like what I would normally do. I'm like, body, what do you want? You want a comfortable bed, good food, and a show? I will give that to you. And you will not go to work this week. And that really did the trick.
Yeah.
So it depends on what kind of heaviness you're feeling. And then I was raring to go. Now we're going into fall. I feel so much lighter, so much better. And I feel like I've got my heart back, my passion back. I'm ready to go. So that's kind of the question to ask yourself. Do I need a break? And if so, what kind of break? Listen to your body, listen to your heart, listen to where you're being drawn. Are you like, oh, I just want to sit on a beach all by myself? Okay, then go. Like, what do you want to do? Stop talking yourself out of like, no, because it's too far. And then I'd have to pick up, like, just do it. Just give yourself what it wants and see if that helps you reset. Number 2, be reminded of the truth. And ironically, we're the people who teach the truth all the time. But I think sometimes we need to be reminded of the truth ourselves. And in the way that this comes in my life is somebody who knows me really well, who can remind me of what I already know, but hearing them say it, like, you do this for me. So I'll say like some big dramatic statement of, I'm quitting, I'm doing this, I'm going here. And you'll be like, yeah, but remember 2 years ago you said that. And the reason you said it was this. And then you felt differently after this. And you know what I mean? Like somebody that can walk you through, who knows you well enough. So whether that's your spouse, like for me, that's Jeff. Like he knows my ministry inside and out. He knows me so well that he can help direct my thoughts back to the truth instead of me over dramatizing. Or I'll say, this person always does this and that. And you'll be like, well, okay, so did you say this or did it, you know what I mean? Like you help me navigate in truth. So
I think it's fair though to have that time of organized over dramatization or venting, some might call it, and to kind of get it out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like otherwise you might bottle it in, which can also be bad. And sometimes there's I think you kind of need that. And almost as it's even coming out, it sounds as ridiculous as it really is. But yeah, I think there's a healthy way of allowing that to happen too.
Sure.
Just not making any decisions in that time.
Yeah, exactly. But especially like you were saying, so if you're an extrovert, sometimes you just need to talk it all out. You know, I sometimes don't know what I'm feeling until I say it. I don't know what I'm thinking until I say it. Like, I do have thoughts, but my thoughts come
in the form of words.
They do. It's true. Like my thoughts and words happen simultaneously, which is like a bad and a good.
Like you're like watching yourself in a movie or something.
I guess I am. Who knows what I'm gonna do? I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet. But
very unpredictable.
As a extrovert though, like you were saying, like process it, say it out loud, get it all out, and then okay, where's the truth in this,
right,
if there is any? And maybe somebody can process that with you. And also being reminded of God's truth. You know, a lot of times I go back to, you know, like when I'm feeling like, nobody cares, this is dumb, like I'm wasting all my effort. I'm always reminded of that, like, do not be weary in doing good, but at the proper time we shall reap a harvest. And I remember I went through a period of ministry where I was so tired. It was when we had just had our second child. And my worship leader, Johnny.
I'm still in that season, by the way, right? 4 years later.
Oh, it's gotten better. But Johnny would always ask me, how are you doing? And I'd be like, I'm so tired. I'm so overwhelmed. And he'd always say, like, do not be weary in doing good. Like he would just quote scripture to me. He would pray for me.
Made you sick, didn't it?
I was just like, shut up, Johnny. You don't understand. But you know what? He was very compassionate toward me too, because if there was something like laborious we had to do, he'd be like, I'll carry that for you. You're a mom, Kristen. You've had kids. You deserve to take a break. Like he heard me in the part where I'm like, I'm tired. And when he could take something off my plate, like we'd go on a trip, like a leader retreat, and he'd be like, I'm going to carry your luggage and just leave it out by the car. And I'll clean up the kitchen because you clean up after people all the time.
You haven't been milking that for this whole time.
I know. He's very nice to me. But I feel like having those people in your life who can remind you of the truth of like, no, you got this. You're just tired. Like, let me help you out. And that kind of brings me to the third one is when you've lost your heart for ministry, let others be the heart for you until you get yours back. And I think it's okay in those seasons, like for me to rely on a Johnny, like in his heart to serve, and his heart, like to pray over me or to quote scripture to me, even if I wasn't feeling it totally in the moment, just to let him be the heart for me. I remember, again, it was kind of a season, I think this is when we had our first child, where I was just doing the bare minimum to get by. I was so tired, like, and I was just like, should I quit and be a stay-at-home mom? Like, is this even worth it? Can I juggle all of this? And I would watch my intern at the time, and he like couldn't get enough ministry. Like I was trying to get out of going to things, and he was like, can I be there? Can I go? Like diving head first. And he wanted to be at everything, and he wanted to be at like surrounded by kids all the time and involved in every tiny little aspect, where I was like, settle down. Like, aren't you? Because it kind of like shocked my system almost to see someone so enthusiastic and wanting to be like neck deep in this thing, where I'm like, hey, we're going to get by. Nobody try too hard and we'll all survive. Okay. And that was the mode I was in. And I had lost my heart, not like I'm quitting my job, but I was just spent. But I watched him and his heart, and I just relied on his heart for a while until I got mine back. And, you know, I don't know who we all have, like our listeners, who they have in their ministry, if they can rely on someone else's heart for a while when you hit that stage where you just want to do the bare minimum. But is there somebody's passion that ignites you? Is there somebody else's relationship with God that ignites you again? Because sometimes you just have to watch it to be reminded of, this is good. Like, this is a good calling. This is what I want to do. And watching their passion play out, you're like, I want to get back in the game. That looks like a lot of fun. Like, man, look at him with all the kids.
Right.
Like, they love him and he's having so much fun. And, you know, watching the fruit play out from other people's ministry. Like, for me, it wasn't this feeling of jealousy. It was this feeling of motivation of like, dang, this is fun.
Yeah.
All right. You're right. This is good. This is good. I just lost my heart for a minute. I lost my head for a minute because, like I said in the beginning, the reason you lost your heart could be so many different reasons. It could be a death in the family. It could be you just had a kid, you just moved, your spouse lost their job, you are having trouble with staff. Like maybe you work with a difficult senior pastor, or you feel really alone in ministry, or you've had a lot of discipline issues with kids and it's just bumming you out, or bad conversation with a parent. I don't know. It could be a lot of reasons.
All those reasons you gave were like negative, and also you just had a kid.
What?
You said like you're death in the family, you're dealing with a difficult student, like all these like bad. You just had a kid. Like,
it's a good thing, but it's a hard thing to have a baby
It's
or
true.
two or
It's
three,
true.
especially when you and your spouse both work full time.
in the list of negative things that you're working through, child being one of them.
I said you moved. Moving could be good or bad.
That's true.
Okay. Or maybe you're just struggling with mental health in general.
Yeah.
Like there could be a lot of things that are, but it doesn't mean it's directly related to your calling. And that's, I think, the point I'm trying to get through really clearly is it doesn't mean like a plumber isn't excited to go to work every single day. It doesn't mean he needs to quit. It just means like, yeah, today is just not a great day. So our calling is our passion, but also remember, like, you're more than a church employee. Like, you're more than a pastor. Like, you are a full and complete person. Like, Elijah ran out of gas. Like, he had nothing left in the tank. And an angel of the Lord had to minister to him with just food, not even like saying, hey, you need another sermon or another worship song, or you need to fast and pray.
Right.
It was like, you need to sleep and eat. And then he woke up
Right.
and he ate more and then he slept again. Like there's this song by Copeland where they say, I just want to eat some chocolate and go back to bed. And I'm like, yeah, of course. I want to eat chocolate and go back to bed sometimes. And like, we're human. And I think that was such a beautiful picture of like the Elohim, you know, the spiritual beings, like meeting a human where they're at to say, you're a human, like go easy on yourself. You're going to be okay, buddy. Like we got this. It's just, you need some care and comfort right now.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that community around you too. I know that last one you were kind of saying that's almost like a partner in ministry, whether that's an intern or a director, things like that. But just having those people in your life that are sounding boards. I feel like when you have a specific, this goes for any job really. I think whenever there's something happening that's more specific to your vocation, that only people in that vocation can really understand.
Right.
It's important to have that, because you could tell it to your spouse or you could tell it to a friend, or it's like, but if they'll have to kind of like in their empathy feel like, well, I guess that would be sort of like me doing whatever. But when you speak to somebody who's specifically in that, it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And here's how I got through it, or here's some things you can try, or, you know, things like that. Or just to be able to have that sounding board that it's like, I know when I'm telling you this, you know what I'm talking about. And whether or not you even give me any advice, you get it, you know, and there's that like that understanding in another human. So make sure you guys have that community of youth pastors, and maybe that could even be your senior pastor if they understand youth ministry, if they've been in it. But
I think those are the best senior pastors, ones who are former youth pastors.
Yeah. Oh, they probably used youth ministry as like a stepping stone.
Did you listen to last week's episode?
I did,
because we talked
a little
about
bit. Yeah. No, good stuff. Hey, well, we promised you barf stories, and here they are. Question of the day, what is a random place you barfed? What's a random place you threw up?
So there I was in probably like, I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade. And I had a friend over and we did 2 very fun things. One, we ate a ton of nachos, like a ton. I made this like nacho cheese sauce and we just ate a ton. And then we went upstairs and we jumped on my parents' bed, just like
to shake it up.
And shaken it did. And I'm like, oh no. And so I like go downstairs, which I don't know why, because they had a bathroom attached to their room. I could have just gone right in there, but I went all the way downstairs and it was this little like single bathroom, just like the toilet and the sink. And instead of barfing in the toilet, I thought I could only make it to the sink. And so I puked in the sink. And the way I remember it is the sink was filled with nacho cheese, just
Still
orange.
warm.
Like it wasn't like a splatter. It was like
Like a whole party bowl.
yeah, it was like a bowl of cheese. The sink had become a bowl of cheese.
Probably smelled the same.
And so I went and got my dad and I said, Dad,
Who wants nachos?
I threw up in the sink. And he was like, Kristen. My dad's from Tennessee. He's like, why didn't you throw up in the toilet? It's right there. He called it a commode. Why did you throw up in the commode? It's right there. I'm like, I couldn't make it. I'm sorry.
Which is literally like turning your head the other way.
So he had to clean it up.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
You should have gone second. I don't really have a good one. I don't remember how old I was. Under probably like 5 or 6 or something. We were driving up to the mountains, windy road, car sick, and I couldn't get the window back when it was the rolling type. I couldn't get it down in time. So it was like,
I just picture you like
I don't even know if I gave it an effort because I remember most of it landed in the car.
Oh,
But I remember it was a lot like
barfing in the
grape
car.
juice. I feel like was the consistency. So I felt great after that. Like I wanted to go like just climb a whole entire mountain. I mean, I was just like raring to go. But yeah,
that's the best kind of barf, when you feel really good
Right.
after.
yeah.
You know, I hate when it's like you puke and then you're like, oh, and then you have to go lay back down. You feel still bad, like the stomach flu, you know?
Yeah, it's the worst thing in the world. I went through a fairly long period of my life where that was my number one fear. Maybe it still is.
A lot of people are
Throwing up.
afraid of throwing up.
Yeah, it was,
I mean,
it was
I
almost
don't-
debilitating.
I don't enjoy it. I wouldn't say I'm afraid of it though.
All right, well, put down in the comments below, what is a random place that you threw up? I think there might be some interesting comments. That could be fun. All right, so now we're gonna do community comments.
This is my favorite part of the podcast.
Community comment of the day. This is from Hiram Valenciano. I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. He says, hey, I love your channel. There's a lot of great stuff that you talk about that I already do, but there's a lot of new stuff that I learned in each video. And I think,
Nice.
thank you, first of all, Hiram. I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
Hiram.
that. But I think that's important to always remember is that we never stop learning. We never stop growing. There's always A, if you already know it, it's a great reminder. And B, if you don't know it, hey, you learned something new. So I hope that this podcast is that for you, whatever stage of youth ministry you are in, whether it's your first month or 100th year. You're really old. My mind was searching for a number. 100 is what it landed on.
You're
And then I said
100
year.
year.
That's how that played out.
It feels like 100
I have to talk things out because I have to say things to see
Are you
what I'm
making
thinking.
fun of me right now?
No, I'm making fun of every extrovert that
Have
thinks
you
that.
seen those memes where he's like, the youth pastor, I forget how they word it exactly, but it's like, I feel great for 30. And he's like 36, but it's like this old man, like how youth ministry ages you. It's like, I feel great. I'm only 38 or whatever. And he's like 88. But
I think the only way youth ministry really ages you is that you see all the trends that you slowly are not a part of. And that's really when you become an adult at that point, because you start seeing things, you're like, this is ridiculous, but all the kids are doing it. Yeah, that means you've hit your expiration date in terms of fashion, at least.
yeah. Well, they're wearing, everything they're wearing now is like, you guys can't do that. That's what I wore in 5th grade. You can't do that. It's really annoying.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will
We'll
see you next time to help you fast track the growth and health of the...
In your schedule for your youth group. What? Today we're talking about do you want to crush youth ministry?